Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
All right. We'll skip this part. But
Yeah.
today we are going to go over the, go ahead, Sam.
Okay, so Neil, we're going to talk about the eviction moratorium, what it's done to the market and what to expect, where the 2 to 4 units have been priced over the last year and the changes in prices just because of the pandemic, sort of the pressure that it's putting and what that means. And then loan programs that are available for 2 to 4 units and then next steps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Next. We'll skip this one. We know you.
Yeah. Okay. Could skip this one too. I'm sure he knows that too.
Well, and then, yeah, you already know this, Neil, but one of the things I like most about this slide is that there's a lot of so I find it really fascinating because you're working on, you have a retirement plan. I think you have passive income. You've appreciated on a lot of your investments so far. You know the tax code, forwards and backwards. So I mean, I really like this, just kind of outline some of the 5 main benefits of investing in real estate. Mm-hmm. I think we can skip this one. We just kind of talked about it.
Oops, that one wasn't supposed to be there. I meant to hide that one.
Oops.
Oh, all of these were supposed to be hidden. Sorry, Shannon. Go to yours.
Okay, here I am. Here we are. Here. So the statewide memorandum, I'm just going to explain it just to give some background on the eviction memorandum. The eviction memorandum is still in place right now. It started September 4th, 2020, and it goes until June 30th, 2021. It's been extended. Currently there's no indication whether the California State Legislature will extend it again. I've asked a couple of attorneys, landlord tenant attorneys, and they said, I think the state as a whole, the state legislature is not saying much. Individually, some of the individual our state representatives are saying what they're going to do if when it comes to vote, but it's not clear that there's like a consensus, because some of them are saying they'd like to wait and see. So that's most people's view, is I want to wait and see, and we're already well into May, and we have until next month. There's a likelihood they'll wait till the last minute for many people to make the decision. And as you had mentioned, and we know that state of California is going to really start to open up in June. So that's why I think the wait and see is a lot of what's happening. The memorandum was originally, of course, to prevent evictions of any kind due to COVID, but that also meant legitimate evictions, things like not paying your rent, things like doing illegal activity inside the house or property, anything like that. You couldn't evict for any reason. And really, the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, was the one that issued the nationwide ruling for the eviction memorandum. And many states complied. They didn't have to, but California complied. And now the thought is, did the CDC really have precedence to make that call? And even for those states that didn't comply, there are states that did, like California. And now the thought is, do we really want to continue? Sorry, I'm letting somebody in from outside. Do we really want to continue following the CDC rules? So that's those are some things you'll probably hear in the conversation in the next coming weeks about whether the eviction memorandum will stay in place.
What's your thought?
Yeah, Neil, you read a lot up on it. What do you think?
Well, I think they said, given the current environment in Washington, D.C., it's highly unlikely they're going to remove it. Mm-hmm. That's what the guy that was doing the other presentation that I went to said. He doesn't think that they're going to remove it.
Yeah, one of the attorneys that I like to use for my landlord needs, he also said, my gut tells me it's not going to get removed. But he said, he said what I read, which is a lot of the state legislatures are trying to not say much. But I would say I agree with you There could be, we could be surprised though, Neil, in California.
We'll see. The banks have a big lobby, so that could strengthen the argument to take it down. But
Is Carr saying anything, Shannon? They're, I'm sure, lobbying to get it removed.
They're lobbying to get it removed.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're, aside from, you know, being very weighted towards helping landlords, they're not saying much at all. I mean, they have a very strong opinion. So
yeah.
Hi, Caitlin. It's welcome to the workshop. Shall I next slide, Sam?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so we have a lot of pros and cons for the state memorandum. I figured I'm a landlord, and also I think it's important. You know, I also invest in real estate, and I'm a real estate agent. But I think there are some pros, and the pros are there are tenant protections from being evicted regardless of financial ability to pay during a pandemic, because of the economic pressure that the pandemic has placed on, quite frankly, many of the most working class and lower middle class housing that is in the United States as a whole. It also protected tenants caring for or those contracting COVID, because especially at the peak when moving services and housing services were on hold, it would be very difficult for a landlord to do that. So of course I get that reasoning, but there were a lot of other things underneath there that were happening. On the con side, of course, landlords could not collect rent, even for valid evictions. There were a lot of government programs in place to help tenants pay for their rent if they were affected by COVID. The only challenge, especially in LA County, and I'll speak to LA County, is there wasn't enough money to go around. So I do remember when they first released it in September, and the CDC also released their policy ruling on the eviction memorandum. There was a big infusion of money, and then it was quickly dispersed, and then there wasn't enough. So I think every time they have replenished the funds through the state coffers and county coffers, but they immediately get spent. So I still think that there are some landlords that are still not collecting. And one thing I will say is, and I'll say the other con right here, it's unclear the length of time that we will do. You know, they've extended it 3 times already, between 1 and 3 months each time they've extended it, and they're following the CDC guidelines, especially state of California. And we are already a very tenant-friendly county. So on top of the very friendly policies we have in place, we now cannot move people out. Most of California's most politically liberal counties are very tenant friendly. So
I was just talking to a friend of mine who's a property manager in Culver City, and he was saying that he has this tenant, well, he has all these tenants in this building that are complaining about this other tenant who does not clean his place, and there's like major cockroach infestation and everything. It's disgusting. Wow. But he can't evict him.
Yeah, that's everybody's biggest fear. Every landlord's, yeah.
Yeah. And so, and then I had another one a couple months ago where the borrower wanted to move into a 3-unit, but the seller was like a corporation or something. And so they didn't feel comfortable making one of the tenants leave, or even like asking, because they were worried about the whole moratorium. And then finally, I think the buyer just like knocked on the door and said, like, if you're planning to go, great. If you don't, it's okay. But if you're planning to go, good, because then I can move in and prove to me, the lender, that she's going to live in it. Otherwise, we had to call it an investment properties if it wasn't going to be delivered vacant.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's causing some complications for sure.
It is surprisingly causing complications on those levels. And then I will say this. I have a couple friends, and then my property manager that I recently hired, because I decided I think I'd like to have some help. They manage other properties, and they have said, actually, if you were already a difficult tenant before COVID, then you just found a way to get a free ride for an indefinite amount of time. But if you were generally a good tenant, even if you were a little difficult at times, but generally you pay on time, there's not been very much difficulty. And I see that with my own tenants. Nobody has been so difficult that they don't pay. And so I do think that there are some people that are taking advantage of the system. And then there are those people that, for the most part, if they have a job, they're working, they're going to pay. It's a pretty simple equation, just like before the pandemic. So
yeah, a lot of them don't want to get their credit report.
And a lot of them don't want to move. It's moving is a hassle, and then moving during COVID is even a bigger hassle because the cost of moving has gone up from renting the moving van to the moving services if you ran movers, and then all of the packaging, the boxes, the accoutrements you need to pack your things, the costs have gone up. So
right,
yeah.
because all that shipping too of everybody just at home and Amazon ordering everything. Wow, I didn't think about that, how it affects moving too.
Well, we're losing Congress seats too. We have so many people leaving the state.
Oh yeah, there's a redistribution. You're right.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Caitlin, I want to say just hi to you because I know you came late, and we would just like to at least say hello to everyone. Hi, I'm Shannon Shue, and this is Samantha Scher. She's a lender. We have Neil already here joining us. He's a former client of mine. Do you just want to say a little bit about yourself and what you'd like to learn about investing in real estate?
Yeah, hi. My name is Caitlin. I live in Mar Vista, and so Shannon, you've always had a big presence here, and I've met you a few times, like knocking on our door, and you've sold a house across the street. And so my husband and I are renting right now, but our duplex is being sold. And so we're, uncertain what's going to happen with that. But while we probably can't afford to buy in this market, we love, I love learning about real estate, and I'm actually studying to get my real estate license. But we also hope to be buying in the near future. So I really admiring all the marketing and everything you've been doing on your Instagram page. And so I saw that you were doing this, and I thought it'd be just like a great way to learn more about what's going on currently,
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, it's good to, well, I'm not seeing you, Caitlin, but see you again with quotation marks. And yeah, and I'm really glad that you joined and excited that you are pursuing a license. So yeah, we can talk offline about if you'd like to ask any questions about that. So
thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm also happy, Caitlin. So I'm the sorry, my husband's texting me about getting the kids to school. I'm the mortgage lender here on the call, and always happy to walk you through the process for your future clients or yourself or whatever. So any question is available today. Yeah, you got it.
Awesome, you guys. Well, I'm going to go over a little bit of some stats that I pulled from LA County. I was going to do a comparison between LA County and LA City, but thought the numbers weren't very interesting. So I am going to say it's just LA County, not versus LA City. These are multi-units that sold in the 1 year before the pandemic and then the 1 year after the pandemic. So sales between April 2019 to April 2020 of last year, duplexes, we sold 3,979 duplexes in all of the county, and the average price was $815,000. So, and it's averaging every property. Keep in mind, like Mar Vista, for example, Caitlin, you mentioned, and you're in a duplex. Last year it would not have sold for $815. It would have sold for much more, but obviously there are some duplexes selling for much less. Triplexes in all of LA County, there was 1,353 sold, and they were averaging $929,000 each. Fourplexes sold, there were 1,607, and they were averaging $1,179,000, almost $1,180,000, excuse me. And then when you look at the same time period between April 2020 to April 2021, the duplexes that were sold we can see a decrease in just those 2 years, right? There's 3,152. And then of course, because there's less inventory, the prices go up. And so the average price point went up to $877,000, almost $878,000 on average. Triplexes, there were 1,289 sold in last year. and 1,003,000 was about the average. Fourplexes is 1,403, and the average price point was 1,209,000. And what does this tell me? I mean, we are up 7% in duplexes and triplex sales, right? That's in the price, but we are down. I mean, we have less inventory selling and more higher in price. Just like supply and demand, there's less demand. Sorry, there's higher demand and there's less supply. The prices will absolutely go up. So I found that to be very fascinating. I actually found it interesting that in the fourplex, though, we've only gone up 2.4%. Which means I'm not exactly sure why it's a smaller step up, but I have noticed, and Samantha will talk to us about the lending and what lending is looking like on 4 units, 3 units, and 2 units. But lending has gotten much closer to higher down payments that are like commercial. So especially the 4 unit. I'm guessing that if we have to put 25% down on a 4 unit at an average price point of 1.2 million. That's $300,000 that needs to be put down for a fourplex. Whereas some duplexes and triplexes, you know, where you can put a little less down, which means it's still, quote, an entry point for first-time buyers, first-time investors, or first-time homeowners. Sometimes people want to buy. I bought my first property as an investment and lived in it. So, yeah. That I just kind of giving you that 1 year before and 1 year after. And when I did these numbers, when I wrote it down, I had done some other numbers too, but overall it really shocked me that, how much the prices had gone up in 2 categories, but not the fourplex. So I just wanted to point that out to you guys. Sam, you're up.
Very interesting. I was going to ask you a question.
Oh,
so
please.
How do you think the eviction moratorium is going to make those numbers change for the year to come, right? For the rest of the year? What's your expectation?
Yeah, so when we first talked, when the eviction moratorium first went into place, I'm like, oh no, this is going to really depress 2, 3, and 4 unit prices. I want to be a buyer. You know, I even think I told Neil this when I first helped him over the summer. I said, you know, I think this might be a good place to go. And then lo and behold, never mind, I was wrong. The interest rates were too attractive. I think with if the eviction moratorium continues, we still have very low inventory. What I'm seeing still in the single family market is still going to be applicable in the multi-unit market. Particularly duplexes. I think duplexes are almost like single family homes. You know, the same level of interest, the same level of like an entry point for investing. But I still think the fourplexes are still going to be a little bit harder sell. Mostly because of the down payment. I actually think it's down payment driven. I didn't think at the beginning it was it was 6-7 months ago. I thought it would be moratorium driven, but now I'm beginning to think it's down payment driven, and it's just not a very appealing file to lenders. And you can speak to that in a minute. But I do think the eviction moratorium, because of also the government programs that can help stop the bleeding for some of the tenants, is what's giving something to the landlords in the meantime.
Right. Unless they're just collecting and not paying the landlord.
Oh, actually the programs pay the landlord direct.
Oh,
like the tenant doesn't get to touch the money.
To help that with that loophole. I understood. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Well, thanks for that. I always learn something from you too, Shannon. So thank you. So I wanted to share with you these loan limits. This is just for LA County, Orange County, San Diego County, but not like Riverside or San Bernardino. So this is just interesting to note because, like, let's say for 2 units, right? The max loan size is $1,053,000. And then so forth for the 3 units and 4 units. So if you were buying a 4-unit property and you had the 25% down, let's see, 1,581,750. Whoops, 1,581,750. So then you could buy a 4-unit property of 2.1 million, put 25% down, and do a conforming loan. Conforming loans are going to be better interest rates than a business loan or commercial loan. Obviously way better than a private money loan. So if you take any of those loan sizes and you divide it by how much the down payment is, then you could see about how high, you know, you could go in purchase price. So let's go to the next slide, Shannon. So for duplexes, and I put a little picture what a duplex is. I'm sure Caitlin and Neil both very familiar, but sometimes a duplex will be like a house in the front and then like a little place in the back, not an ADU, but like a smaller unit in the back. It doesn't have to be side by side, but duplexes are great because you can do FHA, which is the government loan program, with only 3.5% down if you're living in it. Conventional, 15% down, but you're going to have mortgage insurance. And then all with anything, the less you put down, the higher the rate, right? There's no free lunch. But what's nice about a duplex and FHA is that you don't have to do what's called the rental stability test. So in any FHA loan, when you're buying 3 or 4 units, you have to make sure that the mortgage is covered by 75% of the rent. And typically we don't get really high rents here in California and LA. And so if you're only putting 3.5% down, the mortgage is going to be more than the rent you're collecting. And so then once you do all the numbers, I've been in this business long enough to find out, it never pencils out for places in Los Angeles. So if on a duplex, you don't have to worry about that rule. So you could put as low as 3.5% down. So on that duplex where the loan size was a maximum of $1,053,000, you could buy a duplex of like $1,090,000 with 3.5% down, no problem. And it's nice not to have to part with so much money if you're going to be moving into it, and then you can reserve some of the money you might already have saved for another investment. If you're going to buy an investment property though, for a duplex, a triplex or a quadplex, it's 25% down. And that's also the sweet spot for the best interest rate. So even though on the left-hand side it says you can put less down, if you could put 25% down, you're going to get the best rate. And then you'll start to see that return on your investment a little more so because you'll be able to actually collect rent maybe more than what your mortgage is. You want to go to the next slide? Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. I just want to say also what Sam said about the rental. Sorry, it's called the rental test. Is that what you call it?
Yeah, like a rental stability. Mm-hmm.
Rental stability. Because LA County, San Diego, and Orange County are also included in this. San Francisco, no doubt. Oakland, no doubt. They're these counties that have very high purchase price for multi-units, but very, even if they are charging market rents, it's still not enough to make the mortgage. So it only really makes sense to get started investing when you get started investing and you live in it, because then you are paying a little bit higher rent than you would for the rental market, but you own it and you get to enjoy the appreciation. Otherwise, I am advising a lot of folks that are getting started investing today, say, you know what, I think if you can put a little bit more down, it would just make it a little cushier for you with your payments. Or if you're not living in it, then you have to put more down to just make it make sense. So
absolutely. And people here in LA Shannon knows and tells everybody that invests with her that when you buy in LA, it's not necessarily about getting it for the rent amount, right? You're not going to see a huge amount every month in rent. You're buying for the appreciation. So every year, as she just shared, right, how the units have increased over this last year. Anyways, for 3 and 4 units, it's going to be 25% down. And I put FHA is available. Like if you Googled it for any market, yes, FHA is definitely available. 3.5% down for 3 to 4 units. But in LA or any of the high cost counties we've just mentioned, it's just not going to pencil out. So 25% down is the safest, best way to go for 3 and 4 units. So just some other lending updates. Interest rates are still very, very low, somewhere around 3.25%, sometimes a little bit lower, a little bit higher. And money is still very, very cheap. So I'm talking to a lot of people right now that are thinking, you know what, I'm not going to buy another house. I'm just going to stay and renovate. So I'm helping them pull cash out. And then that's going to, make those properties even nicer for when they're finally ready to sell. And depending on your income, I know, Caitlin, you said you guys aren't quite ready to buy, or you don't think you might not be able to afford yet, but just looking at that from 2020, if you want to just think about where you guys were for 2020, if you were W-2'd or self-employed, how income is being looked at. So if you're salaried, we could just use your straight salary amount. If you're hourly, we have to use the average hours for the last 24 months. And if you're self-employed and you haven't filed tax returns yet, then we'll still need to see the 19 returns and then the profit and loss statement for 2020 and for 2021. So we just want to make sure that the income can support the payment of this new house you want to buy. It'll be interesting for when people start to file a year from now, right, for 2021. 2020 is probably overall not going to look great for most buyers. So it's going to be, a lot of lenders are going to need to be able to do a 1-year tax return. So we can ignore 2020 and only look at 2021. So that's coming. It's around the corner. We already have some programs right now where you can do 1-year tax return. So just kind of keep that in mind if that's something that applies to you or people that you know.
Great. And by the way, I think one of the other things you can do also is, in terms of buying a first investment, Caitlin, mostly for you, and for you, Neil, I think, laddering up, potentially even looking at commercial is a great way, but like Caitlin getting started is I bought a house in January 2020. I added an ADU to the back, and so I've really made it into a duplex. So, and then how much I put in, well, it's been great that it's been such a great year, because now I can do a cash out refi and pretty much pay myself back for the cost of putting the ADU on my in my yard, in the backyard. So, not always doable on every home. So, but the fact that we've just had such a great year.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of clients. I have already maybe like 12 or 15 just that reached out last week to talk about using some of the equity that they've built in the last year, just to get like a little $50,000 HELOC or something like that. Can be really helpful to them if they're looking to maybe just finally redo the kitchen or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what you'll want to do if you are looking to buy, or Caitlin, obviously when you have some new clients, they always should start with their lender first, get pre-approved, then the lender will provide the pre-approval letter, and then you can start looking for properties with that buyer. You don't want to show them property before they're pre-approved, because you just never really know what their situation is. I just had a client call me the other day. She said, I'm ready to buy $1 million house. I said, great. How much do you have down? 20%. Great. What do you do for work? Wow, who's really working these days? I was like, well, there's a lot of us still working these days. But she, I guess, was laid off, unfortunately, from Toyota, and she's now working, she's collecting unemployment. And so, if you don't have a lender who's going to ask those questions, you might think, oh, I have this great buyer who's going to buy $1 million place with 20% down. She's golden. But, when I was able to dig a little bit, she's not golden. She needs to get a new job, which hopefully she will soon and be able to buy. But always good to check with the lender first.
Yeah. That's good to know. All right. Well,